Life was very unpleasant, to put it mildly. I'd grown up there under very normal circumstances, but suddenly life changed, like from day to night time. I was walking home from school by myself, all my friends were gone, and it was a kind of a sad story. Not to be able to communicate with your friends anymore. There were a few friends who started to already avoid me or not come to my house before Hitler's time, let's say in 32, 33. But then it was very markedly changed to being ostracized and being left out of all activities.
The non-Jewish population of your town, how did they respond to Hitler's coming to power and the Nazi rule?
Well, many of them thought it was a wonderful idea, since Germany had been really in a depression, and so they kind of expected great things from Hitler. Others just shrugged their shoulders and said, well, we'll see what happens, and just took it as it came. I saw the boycott of all the Jewish department stores in our city, who were being boycotted by SS troops standing in front of the building and watching everyone who would walk in, and naturally hardly anybody would dare to walk into the store. I was also affected by my father having to resign his position. We had also public places to go swimming, and we couldn't go there anymore because Jews were not permitted.
Did many of the people, non-Jews that you knew, did they become members of the Nazi Party?
Yes, they did. But most of them felt compelled, or probably really had to, since they would lose their positions, their jobs, if they were not. And everyone was wearing the Nazi, the swastika on their lapels. For instance, an English teacher we had in school, he was at the same time also a professor of English at the university, who was a great Democrat. And he refused to walk into the classroom and raise his hand and say, Heil Hitler. This was a required greeting. And he said, well, I'm not going to do it. So he just continued to do his usual thing, and he was thrown out. He lost his position at the university as well as at the school. Very often in the evening when we went to sleep, we used to hear these SS troopers marching by our house, and you know how these huge big boots sound, and they echoed through the street, and every time 2 or 3 would march by our house, our hearts stopped. We thought they're coming to get us, or they're coming to get our father. My sister studied medicine, and she studied at the University of Vienna. She wanted to go very badly out of town, but my father talked her out of it and said, listen, stay here. It's still a little bit calmer here in a small town than in a big university. She was examining a patient in an obstetrical course, and some of her Nazi students stood up and shouted in the arena. You know how they have these big lecture halls. This is a Jewish woman, and she should not examine an Aryan patient, and stopped her from doing it. Then she studied as far as she could manage and got all of her courses done to take her final exam, but then she found out that they wouldn't accept her for the final exam. That was in 1937. That's when she decided to emigrate. My sister said to my dad, it's time for me to leave, and we did have relatives here in the States who were willing to help her to get started here. So I said at that time, I'm going right along with my sister. We're going together. Originally, we went to Buffalo, New York, where my brother was at that time established. He needed English lessons very badly. Although I had English in school, but it was very insufficient. my sister studied for 2 years in Buffalo, and I went to a business school in order to learn something. I moved then to New York and worked in New York for quite a number of years.
And your parents stayed in Germany?
My parents stayed because my father always had the opinion that Hitler wasn't going to hold out very long. And he kept saying, he'll hold out a few months, then he gave him a few years, and I know that a lot of his friends had the same feeling. He's a madman and he cannot possibly manage to hold this country.
Your father had been arrested at
Yes,
some
he
point.
was. Yes. He was in a concentration camp, Buchenwald, at the Kristallnacht, the 9th of November 1938. And he was being held there for about a week or 10 days. Finally, in 1939, my parents came over to this country also, just about 3 months before the war broke out. What we mainly experienced is to just be able to walk on the streets and feel relaxed and be able to say anything you wanted to say, which you could not do in Germany anymore. And naturally, the few years that we lived there under Hitler's regime were very depressing, and you were in constant fear of something happening to you. Then we enjoyed just being able to do the things we wanted to do and to socialize with people and to be very free. We just really felt free like birds. I did never go back to my hometown since I have absolutely nobody there. I also felt that maybe I couldn't cope with it. I was a little bit afraid. When we visited my husband's hometown, I felt very depressed going around in a very nice little town where there wasn't a single Jewish family anymore. I feel very positive about it. I'm very proud to be Jewish. And I consider myself very fortunate to be here in this country and to have had a very good life here.